Coming in at number 15 on our organizational value rankings, it's the franchise, Erik Brännström.
I mean, I'm excited for this one. Erik Brännström. Once Logan Brown had left the Sens organization, Erik Brännström has now been the most polarizing player for Sens fans online. And hey, at least people are talking about him. If I'm Brandy, I'm looking at this as a positive way because there's the analytics community that absolutely adores him, and the numbers are there to back it up. And then the old time hockey type thinking where it's like, hey, if you're going to be a defenseman, you got to be big, strong, and mean. And that's not what Erik Brännström is. So there's a divide there for sure. I like to think I come somewhere in the middle, probably leaning a little bit more towards the analytical side of looking at Erik Brännström because, as you guys know, I've been a big Brandy guy. I feel like every time Ross and I do the organizational value rankings, I'm pushing to get Brandy bumped up there. I would even say this year, I would have bumped him up higher if it was my own personal list. But here we are with Brandy at this spot, and I think he had a great season, and he was rewarded with a 1 year, $2 million extension.
Elsie, he's up 9 spots from last year. I don't know what more you want from me. Now, that was a bit of a market correction in itself because when we started this, we were so hyped on the Erik Brännström trade.
Yeah.
He had just been traded there at the deadline before COVID comes, takes out the year. We put him at 5th.
That was definitely my influence there.
The next year, we had him at 7th, Billsy. He didn't even move down that much. And then he went down to 24 last year. So now he's back up at 15. But you mentioned it, like the poise with the puck was starting to show more and more at the NHL level. It was proved with that end-to-end goal he scored against Tampa at the end of the season. Had 2 goals, 16 assists, 18 points, 38 penalty minutes, was +5, 74 games. And you know what? Like the way DJ Smith describes him, it's what he is. He moves pucks. Like that's what he does. He moves pucks. And I think that every good team needs that. Now, does Ottawa have a surplus of that though? When you look at Chychrun, Chabot, and Sanderson all being able to kind of do the same thing, but with other areas. The battle for Erik Brännström is always going to be moving guys away from the front of the net and those defensive board battles. And it's something where he's going to have to use leverage in terms of positioning rather than just his brute size like a Tyler Kleven can, just by protecting the puck with his frame. But where Brandy has improved a ton, and I give him a lot of credit for this because his career would not have been very long if he didn't. He doesn't get smoked every game now. Remember last year, 2 years ago, Pillsy?
Yeah.
Every game he was getting licked 2-3 times behind the net. Now he's starting to be smarter with how he's evading forecheckers. And I really think that step in the right direction has allowed him to play more meaningful minutes because he's not, recovering from a huge hit that he took a shift earlier. So I think that was a huge step forward for Erik Brännström. And now next, it's either going to be, how's he going to get more opportunity in offensive situations? Because let's be honest, like offensive zone faceoff, Brandy's ready to go, but also Jake's ready to go. Also, Shabby's ready to go if Jake was just on the ice. If you're a coach, you're probably going to put those 2 guys out there before him. They're all left shot defensemen. They're all kind of doing the same. So he's going to have to find his niche continuously if he's going to be an Ottawa Senator everyday defenseman.
Well, I actually think I'm going to spin this the other way, Ross, and I'll push back on that. I think instead of finding his niche, he just needs to continue to be a jack of all trades guy. And that's the point I always bring home.
Ends, though, right?
What?
Master of none is how that phrase ends.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Yep. Because there's masters of all different types of defenders that you want on the Ottawa Senators, right? Like there's guys that do things better than him, and that's just a plain fact. Like I'll quickly do my Brandy versatility segment here. He can play left side, he can play right side. He can play on your top pair, second pair, short sample size. Obviously, you don't want him there, but if there's injuries, he can do it. He can play on the power play. He can play shorthanded. He can move pucks in transition. His defensive game has gotten so much better. Like, obviously, he's not one of the top defenders on this team, but he's not a liability out there defensively, in my opinion. And he can play with anyone. I love going to Natural Stat Trick and looking at his stats. Ross, last year, who do you want to peg as the top pair last year? The pair with Jake Sanderson on it, so Sanderson and Hamonic, or the pair with Chabot and Zub?
Chabot and Zub, come on.
Chabot and Zub, okay. They had a Corsi 4 of 50.68. Nick Nick Holden was with Erik Brännström for 440 minutes. Their Corsi 4 was 55.69. Now, obviously, you can say that's third pair. They're going against lesser competition. Totally fair. When Brännström played with Shabbat, Corsi 4 of 56.34. When Brännström played with Zub, 51.25. When the only time Brännström was below 50% is when he was playing with Nikita Zaitsev. Like everyone, when he played with Hammer, 61.74. When he played with JBD, 51.43. Are you getting what I'm putting down here, Ross? When he played with Sanderson, 66.67%. Like, say what you want about Branny not living up to expectations and not getting enough points for a guy that's labeled as the franchise and moving pucks. But very quietly, he gets the job done in all positions. So for the people, I just can't wrap my head around the people that are putting Branny on the chopping block to get him moved to make money for Pinto, because you need versatility, guys. How, like, did we not learn from last year how injuries can derail a roster and how you need guys that can step up and elevate their game when needed? So I don't know. I rest my case. I'm a Branny guy, and I think if you're not a Brandy guy, you're overlooking the value of his versatility.
I think that the versatility is all well and good. And I would just come back at that and say, look at the depth that we've covered on this organizational value ranking. Look how much of it is on the left side of the back end.
Brandy can play right side.
Okay. Well, on the back end in general, I think that last year their biggest issue was not being able to get any offense from their bottom two lines up front. So if that's where you have to cut to be able to get it up, you need to have money out. It's almost just like the salary cap's to blame here, not Branny. It's just like, hey, $2 million, like that would pay for Shane Pinto's. And you just talked about how Joseph, Kubalik, and Pinto, that's a great third line. But it can only happen if you have an entry level contract or two, I guess, because Sanderson's still on his entry level on the back end. But no, I don't like how I've been spun into a Branny hater based on this. I actually think he's a really good dude too. I'd love to get him on the show. We almost had him, and then he got called up because that wasn't this year. He didn't play
no AHL this year.
Yeah. No, he took a huge step. And if he can take that same step again, and if he gets 25 points and can be a solid defensive presence, even though it's defending in a different way than maybe the, prototypical defensive defenseman is, I think there's room for him, but it's going to have to be at the right price when you've got two defensemen making over $8 million. Only two teams in the league have that, Pilsy. Not this year, of course, but after next year. And it's the New York Rangers, who've got Adam Fox and Jacob Trouba, both at $8+ million. No other team has two defensemen making over $8 million. So with that, other defensemen are going to have to take less. And then after 2 years from now, then Chychrun needs a new deal. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But Erik Brännström certainly, I think, did a lot of service to himself in the public perception of him with his play last year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think Brandy's going to break the bank. I think that's the good thing about Brandy is he's just hierarchy-wise, he's going to kind of be stuck as a bottom pair defenseman in the salary cap hierarchy as well. And Ross, I feel like people, both of us have felt this kind of divide. People you're either a Tyler Kleven lover, and that means you hate Brandy, or you're a Brandy lover, and that means you hate Kleven. No, we can like both of them. You like Kleven more than you like Brandy. I like Brandy more than I like Kleven at this moment in time. But I talked about it when we covered Kleven. There is a world where Brännström and Kleven play on the same pair, and they did that, Ross. Mind you, only 10 minutes of ice time, but Kleven only had 8 games, and they had a Corsi 4 percentage of 65. Like, that could be a really, really good bottom pair, and those two guys could grow together, and they'd be a yin and yang. So, I don't know. My final message is I don't want there to be this Kleven-Brandy divide, because people often say, well, if Brandy's gone, finally that opens the spot for Kleven, and kind of vice versa. So I don't think that needs to happen, and I think that would be an ideal third pair for me moving forward.
Well said, Pilsy. Everyone let us know in the comments, what do you think Erik Brännström is going to bring next season, as he just had his 24th birthday, Pilsy. Right, it's go time for this is the prime of his career he's entering now. Erik Brännström comes in at number 15 on our organizational value rankings.